Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Don Stevens. Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Darlington. I'm so glad to be here.
Okay, so Don is an award-winning author, illustrator, speaker, and creator of the beloved The Little Pot picture book series. Don describes herself as a fruit pot, a vessel created by the potter, inspired by the biblical idea of the fruits of the Spirit. Through her stories, she helps children and families discover identity, purpose, and how they can grow in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. Don, once again, welcome to Control or Be Controlled.
Thank you.
Okay, so Don, tell us about the little pots. Where does that idea come from, and what inspired you to create the story?
So the story kind of resonated just really from my journey in life. Um, you talk a lot about control, right? And I think I probably am a control freak in that regard. Like I like to be in control of things. And just growing up, I really wanted to know who I was, what I was. That was something that I desired very much to control. And my whole journey and growing up and, getting different jobs and careers, I tried desperately to just make that my identity, right, Darlington? So I became a teacher for a while, and that's, thought, well, this is what I'm created to be. Like, this is the best job ever. And then I stopped being a teacher. I stayed home with my kids for a while and tried to find fulfillment in something else. So I got another job, kind of running a business, but wasn't really selling a lot of stuff. And so I was bad at sales. So that was very hard for me to be successful in that. And so, I kind of went out and looked for a job at that point in my life and decided, well, I'll do anything but sales. And lo and behold, I ended up in a sales job. And so, I worked really hard, looked at that job, got good at it. So, and I began to define myself in that role, making that my identity. And then it was in sales for a very large company, and they at one point decided to cut the division I was working in, and my job no longer existed. So I lost that job. So just my attempt to control everything and define myself by what I was holding in life is really where the story of the little pot stemmed from. So little pot is a vessel created by the potter, and it, like me, wants to know, why did the potter make me? What's my purpose in life? And the potter first gives little pot papers. So it believes its purpose is to be a smart paper pot, till the potter creates another vessel and takes its papers from it and puts it in that new vessel, and little pot is empty and unfulfilled. Basically, like when I would lose a job. Then the potter puts coins inside little pot, and now little pot believes itself to be a rich coin pot. But then the potter makes a piggy bank and takes the coins out of little pot and gives them to that other vessel, the piggy bank. Little pot is once again emptied. And so this just continues. The little pot goes on to become a dirt pot, which it doesn't like. It grows flowers, feels its purpose is to be a beautiful flower pot. But then those flowers are changing. They're turning hard and green, and it doesn't feel beautiful anymore. So the potter then says, little pot, you need to stop defining yourself by what you hold. You're not a coin pot, you're not a paper pot, and you're not a flower pot. Darlington, its flowers were turning to strawberries because little pot was becoming a fruit pot. And so it's just the idea that We are here to be vessels that God can grow the fruit of the Spirit through. And that's not really something that we get to control. We can definitely put things in our life and, be close to God to where He will grow the fruit of the Spirit through us. But a lot of it has been just me letting go of my idea of control and letting God be in control of who I am and what I do in life.
Okay, Don. So, tell us, why do you think lessons about character, kindness, patience, and self-control are so important for children today?
I think that we all want that, right? We all want to be kind. We all want to have patience and, be good individuals. But I don't think that we really help children understand how that's done. We simply tell them, well, be good today, or you need to be kind to others. But all of those qualities are qualities of the fruit of the Spirit that come from God. And so I think through a relationship with God, those things can grow through us. And so I think that we sometimes miss their source and where they come from.
Okay, thank you so much. So, what is the most challenging thing you have seen about teaching children the fruits of the Spirit?
I think the challenging thing is just that it's not something that they possess, but something that they produce. So, Darlington, when I started this and first wrote the story of the little pot, I was became a principal at a school, and we used the fruit of the Spirit and the book to help children understand that they could be vessels that God would produce His fruit through, but they immediately began to see it more as like a character education program to where they felt pride and in the fact that they could have patience or they could have kindness. And we wanted them to understand that no, you grow that. It is like fruit. It can be produced through your life today, but then it's going to be picked, right? You're going to show somebody patience tomorrow, you got to grow it again. So I think that's the difficult part of kids and even adults understanding the fruit of the Spirit is that we don't have patience. We show it. If somebody else isn't feeling it in their lives, then we probably haven't produced it very well.
Okay, so thank you so much. So, uh, moving on. Okay, tell us, after the Little Pots, you created additional books in the series. What inspired each story?
So we went on basically the same idea that I just talked about with kids learning to give their fruit away. Like, you don't have it, you have to use it. And that led to the second book in the series called The Teapot, which is really about how we serve others and we pour out what God is doing in our lives. So the teapot obviously is a vessel that pours its tea into the other vessels. So it really was to help us understand that the fruit that God can grow through us must be picked. It has to be used, and we need to pour into others. The third book in the series was really because I think the challenge then became we need to do more than just be vessels that show love and joy and peace, kindness, that we really need to be bold enough to share with others about who God is and what He's done in each of our lives, to kind of share our stories. And so we wrote in the third book about another vessel called an oil lamp. And that's a little clay vessel that shines, that the potter lights fire to, and it can burn. And I think it's just really about shining. We're shining when we can tell others about God. So in that book, it's called The Oil Lamp, and it's about telling others and just sharing your story. The The last book is called A Small Jar, which is a vessel that I actually purchased from an antique dealer when I bought an oil lamp. It came with the oil lamp. It was just a small jar that fit in the top. So if it got cracked, it could seep oil into the oil lamp and not burn out. And the idea there is just that God uses our wounds and our cracks to help others. So those are the 4 books in the series currently. And they just each kind of help us understand our relationship with each other and our relationship to our Creator.
For parents, teachers, or anyone wanting to help children grow spiritually and emotionally, what is one practical step they can take?
Okay, thanks. The practical step. Well, reading them my books, I think, is a great practical step. So that really helps. But I think modeling it is the most important step that we do. And just, being willing to point it out to kids to help them see, you know, when we're kind and why we're being kind. And just, I heard a grandmother say to me a couple weeks ago, I was talking with her and she was in a grocery store and she was trying to help a person in a wheelchair reach a jar like of pickles or something from the top shelf. And she was with her granddaughter. And when they left the store, her granddaughter simply looked at her and said, "Why were you so kind to that person?" And shockingly, I just don't think our kids see it enough in us because we're busy. We go about our day. We just kind of, are zoned into our own responsibilities. And so if we can model for our children the fruit of the Spirit and then be open enough to tell them, well, that's what God does through me because I have this relationship with the Lord. I think that's the most practical thing we can do to teach and help kids understand that these are qualities that God has that He can produce in our lives.
Okay, so here is my final question for you. Don, what do you hope the legacy of the Little Pots and your other stories will be?
No, Darlington, I just hope that they introduce people to their Creator. The potter, the Bible talks a lot about God as a potter and how He has control of our lives. And so when you have a whole podcast, right, built on control or be controlled. And I think the idea that we as humans want so much control, the final quality of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control, but really it's being willing to give yourself to die to self and be willing to let God control your lives. And so I hope that as people read the books, they first off see the love that the potter has for his vessels. And they can make that connection of the love that God has for all of us. He made us, He died for us. He just loves us so deeply. And so through that love that He has, they can be willing to trust Him with whatever He wants to put in our lives as He puts in little pot, they can trust Him with what He's doing and build that relationship with God to a close, loving relationship that He so desires to have with each of us.
All right, Don, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing such a beautiful message about identity, purpose, and becoming who we were created to be. The stories remind us that growth is a process and that the qualities we want to see in the world, love, kindness, patience, and compassion, they begin with what we allow to grow within us. So, for those who would like to learn more about your work or to get your book, The Little Pots, and your other resources, how can they do that?
Well, my books are available on Amazon, anywhere books are sold. You can also go to dawnstevensbooks.com, DAWNSTEPHENSBOOKS.com. And you can purchase the books there from me directly if you want them signed. That you can also learn about. I run a publishing company, and just to help others share their stories. As we talked about, I think it's so important for people to be willing to tell others what the potter is doing in their life.
All right, once again, thank you so much. And thanks you to all my listeners for tuning in today for this very special episode with Don Stevens. You guys are the real reason why we always do this and why we are always here. And I really appreciate you guys once again from the bottom of my heart. And I hope you guys can take something from this and do well to grab the little pots as well. Thank you so much, Don, for coming to my show.
Thanks, Darlington.